My name is Devin, and this is my first knitting podcast. I am a knitter from the East Coast United States, Virginia. So this time of year, it is already incredibly hot. I think it is a high of like 85 degrees today, very humid, and it's going to be like that until probably mid to late October. So I definitely have been in the throes of my summer knitting right now. I have a few projects that are a chance to take a break from knitting with fingering weight cotton yarn, but definitely here, the lighter knits are a lot more, they have a lot more utility because I can wear them for a longer portion of the year. That doesn't mean that I don't love knitting woolly sweaters, and I desperately wish that I had more time in the year to wear them, but I do sometimes have to think logically and knit things that I know that I'm going to get a lot of use out of. So a little bit about me, I actually started knitting in 2023. I have crocheted since elementary school, and I have done a lot of amigurumi because those are fun little quick projects and you get something super, super cute. I realized that I was running out of space for them and also just didn't know what to do with them. I would give them away as gifts or whatever, but there's only so much giving away that you could do. So I started trying to crochet garments, and I realized that I just wasn't wearing them and I didn't enjoy them. And then I saw people's finished knitting objects, and I thought, I want that. I want to be able to make that. So I had actually also learned to knit in early elementary school at like a club. It was a club where we were making hats for preemie babies. And I crocheted a few hats, and I used that opportunity to learn to do the very basic knitting. And I made a garter stitch hat. You know, you knit it sideways and then you seam it up. Super, super simple. And then I never really did more than that. Never learned to knit in the round or anything more advanced than just a simple straight garter stitch. And so finally I dug up all of my super, super old knitting things and started knitting. Obviously I had to buy circular needles, I had to buy better yarn, but in like midway through 2023, I made a slightly more complicated hat. Then I made a pair of socks, and then I plunged into sweater knitting, and I have not looked back. I don't think I've even put my needles down in that amount of time. A little while after starting garment knitting, I started an Instagram where I could post my finished projects. And I've really been enjoying that, but the problem with Instagram is you get some snapshots, but you don't really get a full, you can't really talk about your knitting. And over the past couple of months, I have been super, super enjoying watching people's knitting blogs, and realizing that I love hearing about all of the specifics. I love hearing about how yarn wears. I love hearing about construction. I love hearing about like modifications that people made and like the struggles that they had with specific projects. Like I just wanted all of the information, you know? And I was like, I could do that. I could talk about my knitting, and maybe people will listen to me. I don't even need a lot of people to listen to me. I honestly just really wanted a space where I could just talk, you know? My younger sibling doesn't knit, and we live together. And I'm sure they are very tired of listening to me talk about stuff that they don't necessarily understand. So I thought, hey, maybe a YouTube channel would be a super great way to kind of get it off my chest, and maybe also gives me a chance to access a different corner of the knitting community than I have had access to previously. I do like Instagram. That I enjoy posting my stuff there. I enjoy seeing other people's stuff, but it's not as personable as YouTube is. You know, you don't get to hear me chat. So yeah, that is why I'm here, and I'm hoping that I can continue to post. It'll probably be, you know, the normal format of finished objects, whips, and then acquisitions. And then I will hopefully be able to post once a month. I am a decently quick knitter, so I will probably have a little bit to show you every month, hopefully. But, you know, we'll see how it goes. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on myself for this. I just thought that this could be something new and fun for me to try. So yeah, with that, let's get started. A lot of my finished objects are shirts, like I said, because it is hot here. It's been warm for a little while, and it's going to be warm for a while. So my first finished object is actually what I'm currently wearing. This is the coloring book tee by Amy Scher. This is a fingering weight pattern, and it is a top-down raglan with some simple striping. The striping in the pattern is actually designed to start after you split the sleeves, but I wanted a full stripe, so I did that modification. I actually poked through the projects on Ravelry to see if anyone else did full stripes. I found one person who had a full striping sweater version, and they, in their notes, said that they started the contrast stripes on the first compound raglan row. So that's exactly what I did. I did mine in a 6 row of the main color and then 3 rows of the contrast color, and just continued that the whole way through. As you can see, this pattern also has a twisted rib detail on the ribbing. And then it's also got a twisted rib detail running under the arms, which I think is super cute and adds a little bit of interest. It's got kind of a fake seam vibe. This is, like I said, a fingering weight pattern, and I ended up using paint box yarns 4-ply cotton. The 2 colors I used are coffee cream and then seafoam. And I really enjoyed working with this yarn. It's not quite as soft as, it is soft, but I had previously been working with, I'll get into it in a little bit, but I had been previously working with Knit Picks Comfy Fingering, which is a Pima cotton and acrylic blend. That cotton is super, super soft and has kind of almost a like chill to it. This is not that way, but now that I've been wearing this shirt a little bit, I realize that like it's super soft. It didn't hurt my fingers to work with. I knit this, I think, on 3.25 millimeter needles. Yeah, like I said, didn't hurt my hands. It kind of flew off my needles, honestly, despite it being fingering weight. The one issue that I had with this, and this is an ongoing struggle for me, is I was playing some major yarn chicken, and finished the body a little bit earlier than I normally would to see if I could make the remaining yarn work for the sleeves. Knit 1 sleeve, ran out of yarn, so I ended up having to order more, and then I knit the 2nd sleeve, and I do have a decent amount of the yarn left over now, but this shirt is finished with a tubular bind off to make it look really clean, and I was not interested in undoing that or doing any sort of surgery on this. So it is a little bit shorter than I would normally like. It hits like right on my hip bones, but I have decided that it is cute and I'm going to wear it like this. I'm not going to modify it. It is a fine length. It's just shorter than I'm used to. So I am embracing that and getting used to wearing a slightly cropped shirt. I think it turned out really good, and I think it's going to be a great summer piece. And yeah, highly recommend the pattern. I think all of Amy Scher's patterns are pretty great. This was the first one that I had ever made, and I had no issues with it at all. So, yay. My second finished object is actually a test knit. This is the Whiskey Sour shirt by Max Sincere, or Max the Knitter on Instagram. He also has the shop and Instagram page called Les Garcons, which is a, I believe, a yarn store in Montreal. I was super excited to test for him because, you know, he does men's patterns, and I definitely prefer a more masculine fit on my clothing. And I hadn't like pulled the trigger and actually knit one of his items before. So when he opened a test call for a summer shirt in a style that I love collared button-ups, short sleeve particularly, I was super excited and I jumped on that. This is a DK weight, and the pattern actually, the suggested yarn is from the Wandering Flock. It's their cotton lino. I decided to go with a slightly cheaper yarn, and I used Premier Yarn's Bamboo Pop, which is a 50% bamboo, 50% cotton yarn. It is so soft, and the drape on it is really, really nice. This pattern is it's a raglan, but you knit it flat. You actually start by doing a Turkish cast on and then knitting the collar in like a tube. And then you knit those two ends together and just start knitting flat from there. It's got a really pretty like textured pattern, which is achieved by knitting on the right side, and then on the wrong side, you go back and forth. It is a knit purl pattern, but on every other row, you start either with a knit or a purl to give it that kind of like tessellated sort of style. It is finished with stockinette that is sewn down to give this really, really neat, clean finish at the bottom. And that is actually also how you do the button band. You knit stockinette straight out and then fold it and sew it down. I think it is super clean and looks really nice. And I was expecting sewing it down to take forever, and I didn't find that it actually took that long. So this is a super nice light layering piece that I've already worn a few times. I think the pattern is set to come out sometime at the end of June, so keep an eye out for that. I'm excited to knit other patterns by Max because I think that this is just beautiful, and I love the boxier fit, and think that that will probably be the case for his other patterns. So highly recommend. The next pattern I have is also, the next finished object I have is also a t-shirt. This is the Moonset Tee by Ozetta. This is another fingering weight pattern. I used the woolly knit brushed cotton cone for this one, that's actually a light fingering. This calls for the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, and I think that this cotton ended up being a really good substitute. And I was really happy because I had been eyeballing the that dusty blue that Knitting for Olive has, and I was so happy that this other brand had this kind of dusty blue, because I think it's so beautiful. This pattern is a drop shoulder. You start with the back and you cast on for the collar and then attach it. And so as you pick up and knit the two front panels, you actually do this collar at the same time. So there's no picking up stitches for the collar, which I think is the reason why it is so clean. Like, it's just, that V-neck is beautiful. It is finished with I-cord bind-offs. It actually calls for a 3-stitch I-cord, which I did do here, but on the sleeves I decided I wanted a smaller, thinner I-cord, so I ended up doing a 2-stitch, which I really ended up enjoying. When I finished these sleeves off, I realized after I had completely, you know, finished the bind off and sewn the ends in, I realized that I had not done the last decrease row before binding off on the second sleeve. I got so excited to finish it and just whoop, completely forgot. And I was kind of debating on whether it was noticeable or not. And I think I had some, like the drop shoulder, I think on one side, I was also missing a row. So those two things added up to make this sleeve way shorter than the other one. So I put it on one day to wear it to work and was like, that is way too noticeable. I can't do that. So I ended up undoing the I-cord on this side and adding 2 rows, the decrease row, and then I added another row to make up for the shorter drop shoulder, and now it's perfect. It's actually the first time I've ever undone a bind off to add to a shirt. So very happy with how I managed to do that, and now it is just beautiful. I highly recommend Ozetta as a pattern designer. She writes incredibly clear patterns. The one thing that I really like that she consistently does is she will say, knit 30 rows. This should be this length. So if your row gauge is at all off, you can adjust to make sure that you actually have the right length. I have knit one other pattern by her, and that was also an awesome pattern. So I'm definitely planning to knit more of hers in the future. I've been eyeballing specifically the Lakes pattern set. So she's got the Lakes pullover and the Lakes cardigan, and I think there is now a Great Lakes pullover that's in a slightly different gauge. I think those are beautiful. I think they're saddle shoulder, and I have really, like, I've never knit a saddle shoulder before, and I think that the fit looks amazing on other people, and I would like to try it. So I've been kind of on a cardigan kick, which you will see. But yeah, I am definitely interested in knitting more after how beautifully this turned out. And with this light fingering weight yarn, it is just perfect for hot weather. So that is all for my finished objects. Let's move on to some of my works in progress. My first work in progress is actually another test knit. I told myself when I was just starting to get into knitting that test knitting was not going to be for me. I had done some crochet testing, and maybe I'll go into crochet a little bit more in later episodes. I just haven't been doing as much crochet recently. But I can talk a little bit more about the patterns that I do for that. I like to knit very like classy items, but then I like to crochet weird things because crochet just allows you to do that. So I'll probably talk about some of that in future episodes if you're interested. But I broke my rule about test knitting when, you know, Max posted that t-shirt, because I was like, oh, that is a quick pattern. It's short sleeve. I am sure that I can do that in plenty of time. And then I was like, wow, that was a really fun experience. I loved like giving my 2 cents on a pattern and picking out potential mistakes. I've done that a little bit in my job, like proofreading things, and I guess I didn't realize how much I enjoyed doing that. So that is part of what makes it really fun, as well as knitting a project at the same time as other people. And I do know that like there are other ways to do that, like knit-alongs, but this is also a little bit more of an exclusive way to knit. Like you get early access to a pattern and you get to knit it before everyone else does. And then sometimes the pattern designer features you in their like posts about the finished pattern or the pattern release. So I just decided, hey, I think that I could handle test knitting. I think I'm a fast enough knitter. And obviously you have to pick the designers that offer like reasonable windows of testing time. But I think that you can make that judgment based on, you know, the window of time that they post and like their personality. There are issues of like knitters who are knit designers that are not super size inclusive and also like have way too short testing windows, which is an issue when the people who are knitting the larger sizes, like it takes a longer time to knit larger sizes. So just making that judgment call when picking patterns to test, like it means a lot to me to do that, but you can do that. You only test what you want to. So I'm going to continue to see, like, if things pop up that I'm interested in, I'm not going to hold myself back from joining those test knits, because I don't know, I think it's super fun. So all that said, the pattern that I am testing is by Michelle Frazetta, or Mishi Fraz on Instagram, and it is called the Fidalgo cardigan. And this is how far I am. It is a drop shoulder, broken rib cardigan, worsted weight. I am using Knit Picks Wool of the Andes. This is my first time using that yarn, and I'd say it's a pretty standard worsted workhorse yarn. It's 100% wool, non-superwash. I did my test swatch and blocked it and was really into the way that it like eased, especially with things in these like rib patterns. Blocking super important. Really enjoyed how it blocked out. So very excited about how this is going to look. And after doing tons of lightweight things, a nice worsted weight cardigan on, let me look at what needle size I'm using, on 4mm needles. Awesome. I think I did have to size down my needles. I think maybe this yarn is a little bit thicker than the yarn that Michelle was using, but looks awesome. I'm super excited about it. This pattern, you start by casting on the collar, and then you knit the back trapezoid, and then when you pick up stitches for the front, you start knitting the collar and the button band at the same time. Very similar to the Moonset tee, now that I'm describing this. But it's super nice because, again, then you don't have to pick up stitches and knit the button band when you've already finished doing everything else. I love cardigans. They're actually my preferred type of sweater because they are a little bit like, they're more of a layering piece, and you can open them up so you get a little bit of air. It's not quite as hot. But the problem with knitting a bunch of cardigans is that you finish the sleeves and then you still have to pick up and knit the button band. So this button band that you knit at the same time is a really nice detail. One thing that I struggle with is picking buttons, and this test knit actually comes, Michelle is working with a person who does ceramic buttons, and she is Warm Stripes on Etsy and Very Warm Stripes on Instagram. Beautiful buttons, but I was struggling because I wasn't quite sure what color this yarn was going to be. It's so hard to tell online. I'm sure all other fiber artists understand the struggle, but this is actually quite a bit more purple than I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be a little less saturated. Don't hate it. It's a little bit outside my color comfort zone, but I think with knitted pieces, that's okay. I like color. So I am telling myself that I am going to be perfectly fine with this color. But again, I didn't know quite what color it was going to be, so I didn't want to buy buttons before I knew. And now I'm waiting for her to do a shop update and see if there's actually a color that I'd be interested in. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Choosing buttons is an endless struggle for me. And now that Joann's is gone, I've got less in-person options for button finding. But I will continue to poke around on Etsy and see if there's anything that catches my eye. But yes, The Fidalgo cardigan, I think it is set to release sometime in the late summer. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for that. My second work in progress is the Take Your Time cardigan by Hohi, or Hohi on Instagram. This is another drop shoulder cardigan, top down. But this one, as you can see, is a combination of brioche stitch and garter stitch. It is knit in a fingering weight, hence the name Take Your Time. Brioche fingering weight. I figured it would take a long time, and I have been working on this for a while, but it's been kind of my back burner project. I have actually gotten all the way to the bottom of the body and just need to do the sleeves and the button band. I've definitely slowed down on this one a bit. There's been all sorts of fun new projects that knit up way quicker than this. So I've been focusing on those, but I am determined to finish this. You can see I've started the sleeve. I had some issues with switching to 2-color brioche stitch in the round, so I had to redo part of it, and my stitches are kind of all a mess right now because I had to redo it. I think I'm gonna just rip the whole sleeve back. I am using, like I mentioned earlier, Knit Picks Comfy Fingering Yarn, which is Pima cotton, I think 70% Pima cotton and 30% acrylic. And this pattern actually calls for a single ply wool fingering weight. And this is neither single ply nor is it wool, but I was hoping that the acrylic in it would give it a little bit more structure, because I know cotton has a tendency to not hold its structure so much. So far I am pretty happy with it. It's kind of an odd cardigan, I'll admit that, but that's one of those things that, like, I think that staple pieces are really fun, like, you know, solid color, things that you can wear all the time, but you're making handmade items, and with handmade, there is an opportunity to knit things that you're not going to find in the store. And that is some of my motivation for choosing patterns, is like these fun pieces that you can't find in the store. A lot of the stuff that I've shown you so far has been pretty basic, but there are some patterns that I've knit in the past that I will eventually show you that are a lot more unique. And I think that this kind of fits that bill. So I definitely need to get cracking on this one. I think that this one will be a really nice, like, very early fall piece, because it is very lightweight, and like I said, it's cotton. So yeah, that is the Take Your Time cardigan. This is, again, the first pattern that I have ever made by this designer, but she does have tutorial videos on YouTube that she will link to that are super helpful if there's anything that you are confused by. Andrea Mowry also has a very good tutorial for 2-color brioche, which I highly recommend if you're ever gonna get into that. People complain about brioche stitch. I think the 2-color version actually makes it easier because you can see exactly where you are. And I also think it looks really neat. I'm not sure that I'd ever do like an entirely brioche cardigan or sweater, but the garter and the brioche together, it gives you, like, you have chances to take a break from brioche stitch. But yeah, that's been a super fun project. Now that I am talking about it, I'm realizing how much I need to get back to it. Yeah. So my final work in progress that I have to show you today is kind of one that I cast on a whim. And that is because I last month realized that I hadn't been to my local Joann's store since I tried to go right when they announced that they were closing all locations. My sibling and I had ran over there, and this was like right when, I don't remember when they announced, but this was right when they announced. I think it was the first weekend after we knew that they were closing for good. And it was a complete madhouse. The line to check out stretched all the way to the back of the store. And I was looking at all of the discounts and I was a little bit disappointed. I was like, you are all scrambling to buy things at a 25% discount. I do understand that a lot of people were stocking up on things that they were not sure would ever be in stock anywhere else ever again. So I do get that, but I was not willing to wait in that super long line. So I turned right back around and left. But at the end of May, I was like, oh, I think Joann's is pretty close to being like closed for good. Let me take one last look in there and make sure that there's not anything there that I want. And because most of their stuff had been cleared out, they were like putting large amounts of like one single type of item out on the shelves. So in the case of yarn, it was a bunch of the same color in like a bunch of bins. So I searched around for something that I liked and was drawn to this beautiful goldenrod yellow. This is the brand Knitting and Crochet, which is a Joann's exclusive brand. Rest in peace. I know that Michael's announced that they're picking up some of Joann's brands to carry in their stores. No idea if it's going to include this. I know that they're picking up a lot of like the Big Twist stuff, and they're also planning to carry more fabric, which is great. No idea if it's going to include this brand, but this is a 100% merino superwash yarn. Neither of which are things, I'm okay with superwash usually, but 100% merino, I have heard that because it's so soft, it pills. I'm hopeful that because this is superwash, it might be a little bit sturdier, but this was 60% off. And I was like, there's no way I'm turning this down. It is a sport weight, but it is, as you can see, a single ply sport weight. So it's actually a little bit fluffier, and you have to knit it kind of at a tighter gauge to get that sport weight. But when I saw this yarn, I immediately thought of Andrea Mowry recently released a pattern called the Come Back Again, which is a cardigan in sport weight. I think that it is a beautiful pattern. So I immediately did my calculations there in the aisle. I pulled up Ravelry, I pulled up my calculator app and figured out how much yarn I needed because this was a good find. I have knitted a single sleeve. This is another broken rib pattern, but a little bit different than the Fidalgo cardigan. You can see it's kind of almost like a zigzaggy pattern. It is a knit 3 purl 1 pattern that you just like switch the placement of, and it gives you this really neat zigzag. This is a bottom up raglan, which is not my first choice. I've done bottom up before, but I've actually never done bottom up raglan. So that will be new for me. I hesitate because like with drop shoulder, it's hard to tell how long your sleeves are, but with raglan, I feel like it's almost even harder. I have never done bottom up raglan, so we'll see how it goes, but I like the cardigan so much that I really wanted to make an attempt at it. So yeah, this is on hold for a little while I work on all of my other stuff, but I like it so much that again, it's gonna fly off my needles and it'll be really fun for winter. I was poking around on Etsy for buttons and I found these ceramic buttons that they were like a white cream color and had blue bees on them. And I thought that blue bee buttons on a golden yellow cardigan would be adorable. So I am keeping an eye out on that because I think that would just be amazing. So that is the Come Back Again by Andrea Mowry. That is all for my whips. Now I'm going to move into knitting plans and yarn acquisitions, of which I have a little bit. I'm actually the kind of person who I don't really buy yarn necessarily on a whim unless I know what I want to knit with it. I am more than anything a garment knitter, like sweaters, cardigans, shirts. I don't love accessories so much, and I think part of that is because I live in a pretty hot climate. So like the window of wearing like thick scarves and hats and gloves is like a few weeks in like the end of January, early February. So buying like one skein of pretty yarn doesn't normally work for me. But I decided that there were some shawl patterns that I thought were beautiful and looked very, very fun to knit. So I'm kind of eyeballing that as a potential option. The first acquisition, let me start with this. The first acquisition that I made was actually from my local scrap craft store. We have a little nonprofit in our city that sells all sorts of crafting supplies. It's anything from buttons to paper to yarn to pieces of wood to fabric, like anything that you can think of, you can find it there. And it is kind of a lot of like, it's called scrap. It's a lot of scraps. But sometimes they will post on their Instagram things that have been donated to them, and you can hurry on over there and grab it. So a few weeks ago, they announced that they had gotten a whole basket of hand-dyed yarns, and I was like, I should go look at that. So I hurried on over there and was there for right when they opened, me and a small line of people. And as soon as they opened the doors, we all beelined straight over to this basket of yarn. But thankfully it wasn't a scramble. We all like took our place and very kindly pawed through the yarn. But I managed to pick up these two beautiful skeins. They're from the brand Lattes and Llamas Interlude yarn, which is a combination of 70% blue-faced Leicester and 20% silk and 10% cashmere. So like a super beautiful blend. And it's fingering weight. So this is about 900 yards altogether. And I thought that these two colors in either a striped or possibly mosaic shawl design would be like super, super pretty. And again, I've never made a shawl before. So I thought this would be like a fun, different project. And because I am getting into some summer travel coming up, I thought a couple of smaller projects would be great to take with me. I don't really want to be knitting a full wool sweater on the plane and then on the beach. I've also got some socks that I am planning to use as my travel socks. So a very pretty shawl, I think, will be super exciting in these two yarns that I got for very cheap from my scrap shop. And you know, buying from them always feels nice because you're giving completely to this nonprofit that their whole goal is to make crafting like way more accessible. So it feels good to buy from them too. So check them out if you're interested. It is, I'll put them here. It is Scrap RVA. They actually have a fun yarn vending, they actually have a fun art vending machine now that is all like little pieces of art from local artists, which is such a cool concept. Richmond, if you don't know, is a super, super artsy city. Tons of galleries. VCU is here and they've got like their public art school. Tons of artists, murals everywhere, and lucky for me, 3 different yarn stores, which for like a small city in like the South is pretty good. So I'm very lucky to have that near me. My last yarn acquisition was another kind of like spur of the moment situation. If you are not following Thea Coleman or Baby Cocktails, you should be. She is super, super cool. Her patterns are beautiful, super neat cabling and textured knits that I just am blown away by. And also she's a really cool person. But I can leave that up to you to decide. But I saw her release this pattern. This is the potato vodka cardigan. And I was obsessed with the color changing yarn pattern that is used in it. It calls for spin cycle yarn, which I have never used before, but always like been interested in because it's so beautiful. It's also expensive, and I am a little bit more of an economical knitter. I like the slightly cheaper yarns. I like buying things on sale. I like, you know, just figuring out how to get the most bang for my buck. But this was something that I really wanted to try. So I had been looking on the Spin Cycle website at all of their different colors. And Spin Cycle themselves actually had a sample of this cardigan made by one of their people, and it had this very beautiful pink, and I loved that. So I actually, for the first time, decided to go. There is a yarn shop here that is a little bit out of my circle. And like I said, we've got 3. So there's 2 that I've been to a lot, one of which is 5 minutes away from me, which is great. But I really had always wanted to go to this 3rd one, so I made the trip out there. It's called Dances with Wool, and it's in Midlothian, Virginia. And I was super, super pleased by all of the yarns they had there. Like, definitely a different selection than my other 2 shops, which was fun. But they had 2 full walls of Spin Cycle yarn, and I marched my way over there to the yarn width, or the yarn thickness that the pattern called for, and I found this. This is their color Always Yours, and this is the Dream State yarn. So, so pretty. So I picked up 3 skeins of this, and I felt better purchasing it from my local yarn store because, again, that yarn's going to them, and it's also going to this brand, which is, I think, woman-owned. Yeah, and it's a Washington brand. So I picked this up, and then the goal was to find some yarn, some solid color yarn to pair with this. I'm also not the kind of person that necessarily chooses the yarn that's called for in the pattern, because again, I am an economical knitter, so if I could find yarn that's a little bit cheaper, I will. So in this case, I did pick the recommended yarn for the color changing part, because, you know, that's a very like distinctive part of this pattern. But I poked around on some of the yarn websites, and I found this yarn. This is Cascade 220 Superwash, and the reason I chose it is because it's a warm chocolatey brown with some like pinky flecks in there, and I thought that it would look really great with this pink. So I am super excited to cast this project on. This will probably be a fall project, so it's going to be sitting, these yarns will be sitting on my shelf, taunting me until it gets cool again and I feel comfortable, you know, winding these up and starting. But it is so pretty, and this pattern is so pretty. I'm so excited. Yeah. And that is all for today. I obviously have a lot of finished objects that I haven't shown you because this is my first podcast. And so I think maybe over the next couple of episodes, I might feature something that's a little bit older, just so you get a chance to see it and I get a chance to talk about it, because that's the reason that I started this channel, is that I just desperately want to talk about my knitting. So let me know if there's anything that you want to see. This is a new channel, so I'm open to suggestions. Let me know what you've been working on, if you have any opinions about summer yarns. So far, I've really enjoyed the summer yarns that I've knit with, but I haven't used some of the like major ones, like Knitting for Olives, Cotton Merino, and their Pure Silk. I am a little doubtful about any summer yarn that has wool content because of, again, the place that I live being very humid and hot for more than half of the year. But if you guys have any like opinions about wool content in summer yarns and you want to prove me wrong, feel free. I love talking to people about their knitting, and part of the reason that I started this channel was also to be able to reach more people and talk to more people about knitting. So let me know. And also, if you're interested in my crochet, that is something that I could definitely talk about, as that is a hobby that I have had for a very long time. But yeah, it was super awesome to record this. I'm super excited, and I'll see you next time.